Well, good morning. Hi. Good morning to everyone. Good morning. Good morning to those who are online, and good morning to those who were in this space in the Great Hall together for the first time for our alternative service. So thank you for being here. Can you give a round of applause just for yourself for thanks? Because I'm happy, and so I will say that for me, being here with you today is a dream I think of probably about 15 years. Thanks. I think for me personally, ever since I really started vocalizing questions that I had about faith and wanting to just really wrestle with the way that I was showing up in the world and noticing parts of my own life where there were significant gaps and wanted to pay attention to them and wanted to do that in community with others, to seek and at least try and fail and be human in it, to live out faith in a way that hopefully brought us more life and brought more life in our world. And so grateful to be here with all of you today. So many of you have been part of making this space even possible. And together, our hope is, as we journey through this fall, that we'll together co-create and wrestle and see what might emerge both in us and then in our midst and in between us. So just know that we really would love to hear from you. We're going to have some visioning sessions and hearing your dreams, things you're hearing from others. There are clipboards on your tables. If you have any interest, either say you want to be regularly informed about what's happening in this space, you're interested in potentially being here to help welcome others. We're hopeful to start having a coffee bar next week. I see you. I have a person who has said that they might help out some with that. If you have any interest in those sorts of things or to helping to set the aesthetic on Sunday mornings, we would welcome you to sign up for that. But so glad that you're here. As we're gathered together, you'll notice there's some orange carpets if you're in this space. Online, I don't think you can see those from where you're probably viewing, but we have some orange little dots. That's just a way of saying we want to be intentional about if you have little humans who are in your life who are like under the age of, let's say 12, because you're not really little when you're a young adult, right? So, they can be anywhere in this space, but we just wanted to have that to represent kids can go on the floor, adults can, if you do that, that's cool, I guess. But that's for coloring, for if you need to stand up and stretch, if you want to do anything like that, we have tables at the back for those sorts of things as well. So we just want this to be a space for all of us to be able to be together. You'll notice in the handout that you received as you came in, there's a little bit about how we're gathering, why we're gathering, and on the back there's some just notes and reflections. A little bit about where some of you might be coming from as you're coming into this space and wanting to be intentional, whether you're a person who really resonates with the Christian story, it's transformed your life, to continue to lean in to what does it mean for us to wrestle with a faith that isn't just about Sunday mornings, but is about the whole of our lives. Where whether you're at a coffee shop or at work, or driving in your car, driving my car is probably one of my worst places of integrating my faith, but I'll just be real about that. That we want to keep deepening into questions about what it means to reflect and animate our inner voices so that we're listening for and moving in the rhythms of God's love in Christ. For some of you, you've grown up in church, but maybe some of the ways that we speak about God and life and faith, some of them just haven't answered some questions about things you care about in the world. And or maybe some of you have known hurt or woundedness from being in the midst of church. And we want to be a space where, yes, we're human and we'll still harm each other. But we want to take ownership for that and continue to become people who are formed by love. And for some others of you, maybe you actually have questions about whether or not spirituality and being human and the questions that you hold, that Christianity doesn't even have anything to say into that space. And we also invite and welcome you into this space where we can wrestle together and see what might become. So today and every one of our Sundays, we gather around a theme. The theme is the same shared between both of our services. Right now we're talking about what it means to be rooted, what it means to know where you're centered, what gives you life. And today we'll explore that a little bit. And as we come together, I want to invite you to sit with that question. Where are you rooted? What gives you life? In my language, I like to talk about this as both knowing, I literally will do this with my feet, if you can see, where I'll get this image of like, okay, am I centered? Am I rooted? And for me, am I part of God's ecosystem of life? Am I being and becoming a person of life in the midst of those invitations? So we'll be considering that together today. And as we begin, I wanted to start with one of the places in the Bible where this imagery shows up. It's from a psalm called Psalm 1. You can read along with me as I read it. Psalm 1. Blessed are those who walk hand in hand with goodness, who stand inside virtue, who sit with of truth. That they delight in the spirit of love, and in love's heart they dwell. They are like trees planted by streams of water that yield fruit in due season, and their leaves flourish. And in all that they do, they give life. The unloving are not so. They are like plants which the wind blows away. Turning from the heart of love, they know and inflict suffering and pain. They are isolated from wisdom. For love knows the way of truth. For the way of ignorance leads to only harm and violence. But love's penetrating light breaks through hearts filled with illusions and reminds us forgiveness is the only way. So this morning as we gather, where are you rooted? What sustains you and gives you life? Let's sit with that question, and as we continue, let me say a prayer as you bring yourself into this space. God of all love, we thank you that we can be together. Might we even this morning find our feet more rooted in the ground? Might we find ourselves more held in love? That by the goodness of your love, and what I believe is the call through Jesus to come home and to live as people who live in the garden, might we be people who then, both individually and collectively, bring about more of your life and your love in this world. In your name we pray, amen.
We're going to invite you guys to participate, interact with this music throughout the service. Whatever that looks like to you, we want it to be space where we continue to wonder, to ponder. So if that looks like standing, if that looks like moving around in the back, if that looks like continuing to sit, we want this space to be space for you and think more about how you're showing up today and how you're doing. So this first song is called Heavy, so if you would like to stand, please join us. Sing along if you would love to, or like to. You don't have to love to, but we're excited to be here, so.
together. I want to see your sadness. I want to share your sins. I want to be your blood and want to be let in. Don't you just, don't we all just want to be together? Leave what's heavy behind. Leave what's heavy behind. If your face is down, take a look around. Do your fingers move? Do your lungs inflate? Are you tired? Are you weary of the hidden pain you've been holding? Hey, did you lose that love? Have you never had it? Are you feeling sad as you did a bad thing? What's heavy behind? Leave what's heavy behind? Are you feeling fearful, brother? Are you feeling fearful, sister? The only way to lose that fearful feeling, replace it with love that's healing. Are you feeling fearful, brother? Are you feeling fearful, sister? Leave what's heavy behind? Leave what's heavy behind? Leave what's heavy behind? Leave what's heavy behind?
Good morning, everybody. My name's Andrew. I'm on staff here at church. Every week that we do this, we want to take a moment to pause and reflect and be intentional about checking in with ourselves. I latched on to some of the last things that Sarah shared, just about what sustains you, what are you rooted in, and I want to start with the zoom out, the big picture. This is a new thing we're doing right now. This is the first time this group of people have been in this room, and it begs a bunch of questions, such as, why? Why church? Why this place? Why have you come here? There are a lot of great ways to spend a Sunday morning. A lot of soul-giving ways, a lot of spiritual practices, a lot of community things. Could be a walk, could be staying in your pajamas, having a nice brunch somewhere. I think all these things would give us some life. But we have made the decision to be here this morning, so I encourage you to ask yourself the question, why church? At the same time, I want to acknowledge that our answers to that question can be very varied. Some people might be really excited. I'm one of them, excited for this. Some people, it's more complicated than that, right? There's some mixed feelings, maybe some bad experiences in the past. Some of you have no idea how you feel. And some of you might be downright just resentful right now. And all those feelings are okay. So I want to start there. Why church? And then the second step I want us to reflect on is, as we are thinking about this concept of root to rise, what are we rising from? What are we dealing with? What are we carrying in our bodies right now, in our hearts, on our minds? What happened this past week? What's happening in the world? And I think it's helpful to name those things. Otherwise, our rising is very generic and maybe vague. But what are those things that require some healing, some encouragement, some faith, some hope to come out of? So, if you look in your handout, the spacing is very intentional. So as you see some of those questions, feel free to give your responses to them, and we'll give you a couple minutes to do that, and then we'll move on. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Jane Steinke, and I am here to introduce our next, we're going to introduce the kids and dismiss them for God's Garden. So if there are any kids in this space, I would love to invite you to come up and join me here, if you're comfortable doing that. And so what we're going to do is we have a song that the band is going to introduce you before we dismiss these kids to God's Garden. And I will also lead us in a quick call and response. So kids, you can come stand up here next to me, and then don't have to sit down. There we go. Okay, and then Leah will lead us in our song.
Come, oh come, come to the garden, gather round, come without fear, known by name, here in God's garden, all are welcome here. Now we'll do a call and response.
Yes.
Come, oh come, come to the garden, come, oh come to the garden, gather round, come without fear, gather round, come without fear, known by name, here in God's garden, known by name, here in God's garden, all are welcome here, all are welcome here. Woohoo!
Okay, and kids, I want you to say really loud, goodbye, church. So 1, 2, 3, goodbye, church. And then, church, I would love for you to say, have fun, kids. 1, 2, 3.
Have fun, kids.
And the kids, you can follow.
I like your puppet. That's cool. Well, hi again, everybody. So today we're focusing on this notion of not only where are you rooted, but what does it mean to root to rise. I already read and shared Psalm 1, which some of you may have heard before. And before I read another place where this imagery shows up, I wanted to talk about where the story of both the Jewish faith and the Christian faith begin, which is in the garden, which is appropriate. We're dismissing kids to go play in God's garden, right, and hang out. But that's where it starts. And the entire story of creation and of humans begins in the garden. It's a place where people get to walk with God and with one another without shame, and there's life. So when we think about where we are rooted, what does it mean to begin in that kind of image? There's so many different ways the story of the Jewish and then Christian faith could have began. But it began there in a garden. Well, it technically began in a dark, formless void, and then it became a garden. Just to be clear, so you don't open up Genesis and say, you totally lied, Sarah. But that's where it begins. So let's go back to this imagery as it's the prophet Isaiah, who came to the people of Israel and was calling to them about what it meant to be faithful and to know and follow God. So here's from then Jeremiah. You can read along either in your handout or on the screen. Those who trust in Yahweh, who hope in Yahweh. That's the way Jewish folks, one of the names for God, and that's what it is transliterated from Hebrew into English. So they wouldn't have said God. Yahweh means Lord Yahweh. They know what it is to be rooted. For they will be like a tree planted by water, spreading its roots out toward the stream. They don't fear when the heat comes, for their leaves will stay green, so that even in drought they aren't anxious, and they trust they will bear fruit. That's from Jeremiah 17. When it comes to thinking about faith and spirituality, where you start the story matters. how you tell the story, how we tell the story matters. There are so many different ways in to thinking about and living faith and spirituality and showing up in the world in general. I love this image of the tree for so many different reasons. Right now I'm looking at Organic Bob, who is our in-house organic all things tree expert. And I just like come along for the ride generally. But what I love about this image is there's so many different things. For me, I'm going to name some of mine, and you can think of what yours might be, of what you think about when you think of trees and being rooted. For me, some of what I think about is to have faith and a person who is rooted in it, described as a tree. It's an organic metaphor. It's rooted in creation. It's something that is tied to so many other things. There's a whole entire ecosystem. A tree can't exist by itself, right? A tree needs soil. A tree needs air. A tree needs water. A tree needs the rest of the ecosystem in order to sustain. It needs the sun. It's not an image that's isolated or solitary. It's not impenetrable, right? As we've seen with the fires, both in our country and around the world, a tree still is vulnerable. And even at times when the fires come and the tree burns, that tree ends up participating in the renewal of new life and the possibility of it in the world. So where do we begin the story? Where do you begin your story? Where do you begin the story of life, of faith? There are other images you could pick. And sometimes those images can also be helpful. Some of you may have resonated historically or may have known the tale of how under eagle's wings God carries us. Maybe that's been important and helpful for you at various points. Maybe there's an image of God as strong tower or faith as that has been resonant for you. You see how those images can help us, but they shape us. They form us. Where you tell the story matters, where you begin it, and what story you tell yourself, what image you have. One of my concerns is at times, particularly as Christian people, we have clung to images that are more like the mighty fortress is our God and strong tower as our central and sustaining image. That isn't the central or sustaining image of Scripture. Not that God can't be, or that faith can't be that place. But the beginning image and the central image, one of them that we see, is this notion of the garden and of these trees. Trees that are both rooted but also vulnerable. Trees that are part of God's ecosystem of life. And part of the wonder that I have, and this is me, and you're going to wonder aloud and inside yourself too. Part of my wonder is what happens and what opens up if you imagine yourself as this tree from Jeremiah or from Psalm 1. Like, go ahead, literally. Imagine that you're the tree. Right? Your feet, roots are coming out from the bottom of them. They're deepening in. The winds come. The storms, as we sang about, they happen. But as you deepen in and grow, so then also grows yourself and the reach of the branches that become part of life for others, for birds that are migrating, for other animals and insects and life. Sit with that image. The first year that I came here to the church, I was invited by a mentor and spiritual director to pick a word for the year. I'd never done anything like that before, and the word I picked was rooted. I had no idea where it came from, and no idea exactly what that would mean. But over that year, as it turned out, it was a year of uprooting also. Because in the soil of my life and my own story, there were a lot of things that were preventing my roots from growing deeper. things that made me more vulnerable to the winds as they came. And so I found myself running into rocks, some of them getting upended, but then also sometimes discovering that the roots were stronger than even I knew. And the rocks themselves, either the roots moved around them or through them, and it deepened me. Not that that wasn't painful, but it deepened me. And this is the image that Psalm 1 and Jeremiah and the garden talk about. Part of my hope and prayer is that we would be a people who are like these trees, knowing where we're rooted and where we're centered, able to go back to that spot and re-find it no matter what happens, so that we can actually rise and to be rooted in the world and to be part of God's ecosystem of life. A person who was really important in the lineage of the Christian faith was Martin Luther. There are a lot of beautiful things about what he did. But throughout his life, he was pursued. People were trying to kill him and stuff. It was not a good situation. And as he got to the end of his life, he increasingly not only needed God to be the mighty fortress and strong tower, but that became the operative image for him. So much so that if you look at the end of Martin Luther's life and his writings, some of them are really horrific. He wrote a piece called Against the Jews, and it led to the rise of a lot of anti-Semitic ideas that got perpetuated in Europe for generations and generations. This is why I think those images matter. Being able to be intentional and curious about what our images of faith and of God and how they're forming us to show up in the world. Because at that point, when he was so set, the image was just God as strong tower. He lived that way in relationship to everyone else, where everything and everyone else became a threat. And Christian faith became about a defense against the violence that he was afraid of. And I get it. I'm not judging Martin Luther. Being human is hard. And yet the call here is for us to continue to, maybe we go back in for a moment to the strong tower. We find the rest when we need to. But then we come back to our center and where our roots are. One of my spouses, not that I have multiple, that was with an apostrophe possessive. He's over there. Thanks, babe. Jokes for days. One of my spouse's things he does is every once in a while he does some yoga with Adrian. Some of you, I heard that page. Yoga with Adrian is an online YouTube yoga person, practitioner, we should probably say. And one of the things that she talks about, she's not alone in this, is you root to rise. Because as someone who does yoga knows, it helps you to remain balanced, to know where your center is. And that's part of this image, is this deep human need. Where are we rooted? And when we know where we're rooted and we live from that place, it allows us to actually to rise. In so many ways, I think that is the invitation and the message of the Christian faith. It's not something to just keep us safe from the world, but it's something to help us to live as people who are rooted, vulnerable, real, but connected to a larger ecosystem. People who are about bringing about gardens of life and of flourishing wherever we are. So for you, where are you rooted? What kind of tree are you? What does it mean for you to keep rooting in? What's the soil that sustains your soul? What do you need more of? Maybe some more sunlight, some more oxygen. And how can we continue to live into being those kind of people? Participating with God in the wonder of creation and the beauty of life that is for us, but is also for all of creation and all of living beings. Where are you rooted? Let us root in so that we can rise, that we can become people of life. Invite you now as we continue to just sit with that, imagining, thinking about what does it look like to root in? Where are you rooted? As we then do this reflection.
So as we think about where are we rooted, how are we rooted, what are the things we need to input more of, we're entering a time of breathing out. And in this space, what we mean by that is, what does it mean to look forward? What does it mean to go into the rest of today, the rest of this week, maybe this next chapter for you? So a lot of things hopefully are stirring around, maybe Sarah's words, maybe a song lyric, maybe just how God's Spirit might be just moving in you right now. We're going to keep talking about trees. In Jeremiah 17, in what we read this morning, it refers to those who trust in God as trees planted by streams of water, which yield its fruit in season and have leaves that do not wither. Which is a big time promise. And I think for some of us, that promise has been really apparent and really obvious and really life-giving. And for others, it's been more complex, maybe harder to find. As we consider all those outcomes, I want to talk about a specific kind of tree right now. I don't know if you noticed in the news this week, if you read this headline, but this past week, Sequoia National Park had to shut down with the big sequoias, which are some of the world's oldest and tallest trees. It caught my eye mainly because not too long ago, my family, we went out to Muir Woods, which is a few hours from there, and took it in. Went on this few-hour hike and took it in, and just the majestic trees, and you just experience life a little differently. You experience the experience of a human and God and creation and creator all a little bit differently when you're in those spaces. And so this past week, because of extreme heat and because of fires, they had to shut it down. And General Sherman, which is the oldest sequoia there, they actually had to wrap the base with aluminum foil just to preserve it. And they made mention that last year, because of fires, they actually lost around 10 to 14% of these giant trees that have been around for a couple thousands of years. So why am I bringing up this really dire and bleak situation? It's a good thing I'm not ending it right there. On the one hand, I hope it's an opportunity for us to pause and reflect. What does it mean for humanity? What does it mean for this creation that God has made? That some damage is being done. That's either like you can't repair it, or it's going to take a really long time to. That's one thing to think about, how we can respond in appropriate ways. And then on the other hand, I want to take an opportunity to pause and think about the resilience of these majestic trees. Right? As we think about being rooted and rising, sure, 10 to 14% of the trees are gone, and that's important. But just the fact that so many of them went through these fires are gonna come out on the other end, are gonna keep growing, are gonna keep giving life to the ecosystem around it, and give life to us in the midst of some very serious environments. That means something, and I hope it inspires and it helps us to consider our own journey. So I'm about to read something called My Sequoia Prayer. It is from the Women's Uncommon Prayers, which is an Episcopal prayer guide by the Reverend D. Montine Lucas. As I read this prayer, I encourage you to either reflect quietly or jot down anything that stands out. My Sequoia Prayer. When I feel tiny, weak, and trembling, or pulled this way and that by swirls of change, too insignificant to be of service, too uprooted to hold my ground, I pray my sequoia prayer, sitting quietly, breathing normally, being centered into the present moment in this holy instant. My mind's eye gradually forms an image of a giant sequoia. My sequoia prayer takes form in my heart and soul as the image forms and fleshes out to fill my being. Centuries-old roots so wide and deep they have become part of the earth, supporting enormous, gnarled trunk that soars into the sky, eternity wrinkles carved into its surface, holding character markings for the ages. Thick, porous bark skin covering the body, letting the trunk breathe, protecting it from the fires that must come to support its growth. Green leaves gushing out the top, reaching to the heavens, nurturing birds and other beings, offering up limbs as if in prayer. Awareness of spirit fills my soul. Sequoia fills my being, spreading down into the earth, deep into the soul, strong into the body. Breathing calmly, sitting quietly, praying trustingly, becoming grounded in humanity, rooted in spirit, striving ever upward. My sequoia prayer fills my cells, my lungs, my heart, my brain, my soul, my being with love, grace, and light, with joy and hope, and with the strength of Creator. I need to go on. Amen.
We invite you again, if you would like to stand, you can stand or remain seated as well. I don't know about you, but I like to tell the truth, but the truth seems to change every Tuesday. When I watch the news, man, it just gives me blues. No one listens on a mission to hear their own voice. It's a wild world, we're all trying to find our place in it. It's a wild world and no one seems to understand it. It's a wild world, but there ain't no way I'm gonna quit it. Love is all we've got to give away. Some folks ain't got a dollar to their name, others got their own jet planes. We all got the same blood running through our veins. Whether or not you pray, black or white, straight or gay, you still deserve the love of your neighbor. It's a wild world, we're all trying to find our place in it. It's a wild world and no one seems to understand it. It's a wild world, but there ain't no way I'm gonna quit it. Love is all we've got to give away. Try a little tenderness, maybe some benefit of a doubt. Another person's point of view, try to listen, not to shout. Hold your opinions loosely, maybe you're not always right. Show a little mercy and hold on to love real tight. It's a wild world, we're all trying to find our place in it.
It's all we got to give away.
Well, you might have noted in the handout that you received, with each of the songs, we had put in both a quote from the song, some observations that the three of us had, and thinking about the song, I'm sure you had your own noticings, and then some wonders. With this one, we said, what if might it truly look like if love is all we gave away? Because at the center of the Christian story is actually that the place that we're rooted in is in the God of love. And if you know where you're rooted, that then increasingly becomes the way that your branches give life. If that's the place from where we come. So what might it look like for us then, as we're rooted, to root more deeply into this love, to have it heal and change and transform us, that we might be people then of life, and that is truly what we give away. So just thanks so much for being here today. It's really good to be with you. I just have a couple announcements I want to let you know about some things that are going down. Today, if you didn't notice on your way through the almost like receiving line down to the Great Hall, we have been having a blessing and engagement fair. Encourage you to stick around. If you didn't, when you came in, if you didn't receive from Barb the handout in the blue booklet, it has information about our ministry partners, ways you can engage, and you can check out those tables after the service as well. And there's also coffee and sambusas that are in the courtyard, which is directly outside of where we are, so you can grab that. We just ask that either you enjoy the sambusas outside. If you're drinking coffee, kind of do what you've done in here, where you lift the vest, drink some coffee, etc. Then, what is also happening around here? Wednesday nights. We're doing Wednesday nights. It's a night for our whole community to be able to come together. We have programming for all ages, including there's the chorale, there's stuff for kids, and then for grown-up humans, there's a class called Disciple that we're doing. It's going to be a year-long journey through the Bible that we'll be doing from 6:30 to 7:30. And there's also middle school, high school programming and confirmation and that kind of stuff going on. That's Disciple. You can learn more at the adult education table right out there. And then also want to let you know about this Thursday night. We're having our first Faith and conversation forum of the season. A gentleman who actually grew up at this church, Dirk Boyd, some of you may know. I didn't know this, but he grew up both here and in Edina. He's been a professor, and he has written a book about wrestling with matters of faith and race, and invite you to join us for a conversation with him. You can also join us on Zoom or online. That will be here at the church. We'll be starting at 6:30 in the the hearth room, which is just kind of when you came in the doors. It's near there. There'll be signage. If you have any questions about that, let us know. And then just, if some of you may know that we've been wrestling with our name, and a group from the community is going to be bringing forward a name recommendation to our church, and so we invite you to stay tuned for that. Then we will go from there in terms of the church members will have the opportunity to vote on that proposed new name sometime later this fall. But just be on the lookout, and if you want to learn more about what's going on with that, you can go to our website. And finally, I knew I forgot something this morning. I was supposed to put a basket or something, but I couldn't decide what I wanted it to be because I was like, do I just put a basket? We don't have any box. I don't know what to do. So if you do want to give financially in any way, you can do it by texting, or you can do it online, or there by the doors on the north side of the building. There is a big box for everyone of all services, because right now we're in here, and then in the traditional worship service is happening in the meeting house. So they're going to be getting out of their service in the next few minutes as well. I think that's all I have for announcements this morning. So just again, a thank you for being here. And as we go forth today, just want us to go forth in that sense of, where are you rooted? And might we indeed be people of life? People rooted into God's love. And might that then be that which helps us to rise up and to be part of the ecosystem of God's life and the goodness of God's love in this world. May you go in that love and in that peace, and may it sustain and nurture you, whether you're singing along to songs, whether you're making coffee, whatever you're doing this week, may you know where you're rooted, and let us together rise. Have a great day, and we'll be around if you want to chat or connect, and go in peace. Amen.
Try a little tenderness, maybe some benefit of the doubt. Another person's point of view, try to listen and not to shout. Hold your opinions loosely, maybe you're not always right. Show a little mercy and hold on to love real tight. It's a wild world, we're all trying to find our place in it. It's a wild world and no one seems to understand it. It's a wild world, but there ain't no way I'm gonna quit it. Love is all I've